Hi sewers, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how to sew your Darcey bra sewing pattern as a Lacy Darcey. So I have a version of this bra in my made to order shop, but it's got fabric here, sort of for the side, front and the back, and then a lace front. And then I saw Ying from Tailor Made Shop sewing some awesome all lace versions, and I couldn't resist sewing this up in lace to show you how to do it. Of course, the method is exactly the same for an all lace version or sort of fabric here and lace here. If you do want some Lacy Darcey inspiration, go and check out her Instagram. She's made a ton of them and they all look amazing, so I'm going to link that down below for you. So with sewing, obviously you can achieve the same thing 10 different ways. So in this tutorial, I'm just going to show you a different way that you can apply your band elastic. Obviously we've got a different type of elastic along the top edge, so that will be different anyway. And then I'm just going to show you a different way to apply your back closure. So you can just pick your favourite way you want to do this, whether you wanted to sort of follow the instructions for certain parts of it or whether you want to do it this way. It's completely up to you. Either is wrong, either will work, and it's just down to personal preference. And the reason this style didn't make it into the original version was it already has 3 styles with this sewing pattern, plus a lace longline tutorial and lace overlay pattern pieces and tutorial. So that pattern kind of got convoluted and complex enough, and I figured this would be a great pattern hack. The pattern's available to instantly download from my Etsy shop. So I really hope you enjoy this tutorial and let's get going. So these are the pattern pieces that we need for this pattern hack. You need the back, the side front for all styles, and then the centre front pattern piece for styles 1 and 4. Unfortunately, we do need to make modifications to each of these pattern pieces. However, it's nothing too complicated. If you've made any kind of sizing, fitting modifications to any of the sewing patterns previously, then this is going to be a breeze. And if not, it's also going to be a breeze. I'm going to talk you through every single step you need to do. So let's start with the front pattern piece. So the modification we need to make to this pattern piece is really simple. What we're going to do, if you just mark along the centre front sort of seam line here, if you just mark 12mm down here, so that's about ½ an inch, and mark a point on this seam there. So then just tilt the ruler. If you're using a ruler, I'm using a Pattern Master, but you can do this with a ruler. And what you want it to do is create a line, a straight line that touches this edge here of the top of the pattern piece and then ends at the point that we've just made. So you don't want it like this where you can still see the pattern piece, as in you don't want it like that, because then that's not going to create a straight edge that we can use. So the end of my line is now at this point. The line touches the front edge or the top edge of this pattern piece, and then I can continue up like that. So it's a little bit difficult to see because of all the other lines on the pattern piece, but we've got a nice straight edge going there. And then I'm just going to cut that. That's the centre front pattern piece done, and what we've done is created a nice straight edge here at the centre front so we can make the most of the decorative edge of the lace. So the next 2 pattern pieces we actually need to add to rather than take away. So I'm just going to stick these pattern pieces down onto this pattern paper. If you don't have pattern paper, you can just use printer paper or even newspaper. Let's start with the back pattern piece. All we need to do is add in a picot elastic allowance along the top edge here. So this pattern's designed for fold over elastic, and fold over elastic doesn't remove or add anything to a pattern piece, it just binds the edge. But a picot elastic, if you sew it along the top edge and then fold it down, we're going to lose the width of the picot elastic off the top edge. So we need to add that in. So to start, just draw a line continuing on from the centre back edge, just up slightly, and add a point 5mm higher than the top of the centre back seam. So that's the width of the picot elastic I'm using. If you're using a wider picot elastic, then just increase it by the width you are using. So I've added 5mm to the top of there, so that's 1/4 inch. And then I'm going to do exactly the same at the side seam here. Just extend the length of the seam slightly and then mark the point 5mm above that. Then following the shape of the top of the pattern piece, just add these points together. You can, if you are using a ruler, just mark at regular points the seam allowance as well, and make sure you go through all your points that you've marked. And there we are, I've just added 5mm, 1/4 inch to the top of this pattern piece. And that's all we have to do with this pattern piece. This is just to make sure that it fits nicely in the back closure, and we've added our allowance for the picot elastic. So onto the side front pattern piece. So the side front pattern piece needs a few more modifications than the previous two pattern pieces. What we need to do is add our picot allowance also to this top edge, but we also need to add in the width that will be going through the slider that we've removed from the centre front pattern piece. So I'm going to work this out in centimetres and inches the best that I can. So there's a centimetre seam allowance here, which is 3/8 of an inch, plus then this little bit here that, combined with the bit left over after the seam allowance on the centre front pattern piece, fitted nicely through here. But because we're now sewing this with picot elastic, not fold over elastic, we need to add that on too, as well as what we've taken from not having the front pattern piece. So we need 1 centimetre for the seam allowance. We then need 15 millimeters or 1.5 centimeters again to go through the slider, plus then whatever the width of your picot elastic is. So for me, I'm adding, so I need 1 centimeter for the seam allowance, 1.5 allowance for what's going to go through the slider, and then a 0.5 centimeter or 5 mil allowance there for the picot elastic. So in inches, that's 3/8 of an inch, 5/8 of an inch to go through there, and then whatever the width of your picot elastic is, if it's 5 mil, like I'm using, or 1/4 of an inch, we need to add 1/4 of an inch on there too. So in total, add up all your parts, so your seam allowance, the 1.5 centimeters or 5/8 of an inch that needs to fit through the slider, and then the width of your picot elastic, and add this to the width here. So for me, it's 1 centimeter, 1.5, so that's 2.5 centimeters, and then 5 mil for the picot elastic. So I need a total distance here of 3 centimeters. Also, what I'm going to do, as I'm adding 5 millimeters along here, that's the width of my elastic, so whatever the width of your elastic is, as I'm adding this here, I'm going to add it to the top edge. That's just to keep this curve nice and sort of gradual, and it creates a nice shape into the slider. If we're going to add 5 mil just here, it's going to cut this up a little bit and it won't look as nice. So we need to add it to the top edge here, the width to what we need, and then into 5 mil or the width of your picot elastic along here. So to start, I'm just going to continue this edge up there for a little bit, and then mark 5 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch across here. Add that in across there. Now I need to add the width of the new tab we need to create. So that needs to be 3 centimeters wide. So I've marked that point there like that. And then this line needs to go down approximately sort of 2.5 centimeters or an inch down. So this is the bit that will go through the slider. So we can't just have it the correct width just to about here, because we need a good amount to go through the slider, and so we can fold it back on itself and sew it in place. So I'm just going to use this sort of pattern master here so we get a nice angle. So about 2.5 centimeters is about there. So we've got a nice sort of thing there, you can see. Now I'm going to move to the side seam and increase the length of this like we did with the back, and then mark the point on here, the width of my elastic, 5 millimeters or 1/4 of an inch. And then again, if you are using a ruler, just mark irregular points along this top edge. And then I'm just going to follow the top edge of the pattern piece. Using this curved section here of the pattern master, like that. And then just join these two together, following that nice curved section there. So that's what we end up with. So yeah, you can see the original shape of the pattern piece and then what we've added to it. So then just cut out all your new pattern pieces. So So there we are, that's all our new pattern pieces. So we've got the nice straight edge here so we can place that along the decorative edge. We've removed the tab from here and added what we needed to in here, as well as a picot elastic allowance all the way along this top edge, and the same for the back pattern piece. So now this will fit nicely through the slider, and the back pattern piece will fit nicely into the back closure. So there we are. So we are going to follow the directions on the pattern pieces for the most part. The only thing that you might want to sort of scribble on the pattern pieces, place along the decorative edge of the lace along here, just so you remember when you come to cut out all your fabrics. So for this new style of the Darcey bra, you can use all lace like I'm going to be doing in this tutorial, or you can use a mixture of fabric and lace, so obviously lace at the centre front and then fabric for the side, front and back. But for this tutorial I will be sewing it all completely from lace, and I'll show you how to cut out your lace with these new pattern pieces. Start with your centre front pattern piece and place the long straight edge that we've just created along the decorative edge of the lace like this. Now I'm using pattern weights, but if you're using pins and scissors, then pin this all in place. I'm just going to pop a couple of my gorgeous pattern weights on top like that. And then I'm going to cut around the pattern piece. Now to make your bra look beautiful and neat, you want to reflect the pattern in the lace on both pattern pieces. So basically you want this pattern piece to be a mirror image of the pattern piece on this side. So to do this, take your pattern piece and place the right side of the lace to the right side of the rest of the lace, and then just match the pattern. It might take you a little minute to work out the pattern of the lace and how it works, whether you need to put it on the opposite side or it continues down like that. Most laces you'll find you'll need to place it to the opposite side, and if I am not mistaken, I think we're there. So the decorative edge of the lace is matching up, but also the pattern in the lace itself, and you might just need to kind of adjust it around like this. So again, I'm going to place my pattern weights on top. I find this the fastest way to cut out lingerie pattern pieces, especially lace. So now I'm going to cut around this pattern piece to create the mirrored image pattern piece for the other side. So now if you can see, we've created two perfectly mirrored lace pattern pieces. So next up, take your side front pattern piece. So depending on how wide your lace is will depend which way you cut this out, whether you cut it out this way or this way. Because my lace is quite skinny, I do need to cut it out this way. And due to the shape and everything we've just cut out here, I'm actually going to flip it around like that to make the most of this lace. So again with the pattern weights, now these delicious pattern weights are from a company called Oh So Quaint on Etsy. I'll link them down below. So I'm just going to cut out this pattern piece. So again, take the pattern piece you've just cut out and place it right side to the rest of the lace. So right side to right side, match the shape. So I think we're about there. And then again, the pattern weights and cut this out. Yep, I think that's about it. Exactly the same with the back pattern piece. So that's what you should have at this point, all beautifully mirrored lace pattern pieces. So next up you need to cut out your lining. So just literally cut out your pattern pieces on your lining, whatever you've chosen to do. I do recommend using a stretch mesh if you're using lace, so you can use white, or if you can match the colour of your lace to the stretch mesh, or even just match your skin tone, whatever you prefer. Just cut out your pattern pieces in the stretch mesh, following the directions on them. Just cut to direction of greatest stretch, just cut those out as normal. So one final quick thing we need to do before we start sewing is just to trim a small amount off this top edge here. That's just so that when we sew the elastic along the top edge with the lace, we can't see any lining poking out above where the lace sits. So when the elastic is here, it's all the edge of the lining is sort of hidden behind the elastic. I'm just going to trim off approximately 5mm or 1/4 of an inch, and just literally just trim like that. There we are, and that's all we need to do. So there we are, I've got all my pattern pieces cut out. I've got 2 of everything, 1 in stretch lace and 1 in stretch mesh for the lining.